Now we're starting part 3 of the series of Ryan's success series, talking about how to build a mindset for success. Today what we're going to be talking about is a little bit different maybe than what you might expect, but this includes first principles thinking and why you need to think independently for success. In the past couple of videos, we've been talking a lot about the mental models that you need and how your perspective of the world is so important for success. But in this video, I really want to highlight the fact that in the journey to success, you're going to have to make a lot of these independent decisions. And you're going to have to really carefully think about these decisions. And you're typically not going to have a lot of other people around you to help you make these decisions. And this is really important because making the right decision is going to be something that you personally have to take upon yourself to do. And by making more right decisions than wrong decisions, and I don't just mean morally, I'm just saying for yourself that are conducive to building you up to be a successful person, that is how you will become successful, by making better decisions. So let's first talk about why you need to think independently. When you're trying to become successful, typically you're standing out from a lot of other people. You have chosen to take a path that's much harder in the short run and even in the long run, and eventually will lead to hopefully a much better life for yourself or for others, right? But a lot of people decide to do the opposite. They want the pleasure now, they want the satisfaction now, they want the gratification now. And you've decided to flip that on its head and say, I will work for it now and I'll get it later. So that makes you immediately just very different from the average person, very, very different. So then if we think about why do you need to think independently? Well, if you go to a lot of average people and you start to complain about your problems, you start to list the different decisions you have to make, the problems you have, and just what other things you need to do, they're not going to be able to help you. That's the thing. And success is really a lonely journey in that most people just have no idea what you're going through and they just can't help you at all because they don't even know because they've never been in that situation themselves. Right? So that's why it's mentorship is so important, all this stuff. But thinking independently is important because you're going to be alone for most of the time and you're going to have to think on your own and think on your feet. And we want you to think the best possible way in that we want you to analyze things very objectively and try to make the right conclusions. That way you can take the right action based off of that and increase your likelihood of becoming successful. This is kind of where you get first principles thinking. So the opposite of first principles thinking is thinking why is XYZ like this? Well, it's like this because it's always been like that. And I also want to point out that's circular reasoning, which is bad. For example, if you go to a new office and you're wow, why doesn't anybody stay past 4:30 p.m. on Fridays? Well, nobody else is here. Why would you stay, right? You just go. Everybody else is go. That's not answering the question, right? That's circular reasoning. It's just saying, yeah, because people leave. That's why nobody's here at 4:30. Hello, yeah, that makes sense, right? Duh, that doesn't really answer the point. You'll find typically is that, these people don't really care enough to stay later and actually, do enough work. Maybe they don't care about the company. Maybe they think the job's not super important. All this stuff, right? There could be a ton of different reasons. Maybe they have a family, all these things. But my point is, you need to get to that level of understanding the reason why something is happening. Not just the surface level of it just seems like everybody just tends to leave. So that must be the reason. No. You need to get at a deeper level because then you start to connect these fundamental truths and you'll start to see these throughout the world around you. And these are the fundamental truths that will open your eyes to how things could be done differently for yourself and why they should be done differently and why you need to justify your own different actions. For example, why does everybody go out on Friday nights? And that's the time everybody goes out. Again, circular reasoning. And it's okay, well, what if I choose to relax on a different day and on Fridays I just work? What's going to happen? Well, you might get ahead of other people who are not working. Well, you might just work on yourself and improve yourself over time might be beneficial. Those are the underlying deeper reasons. And then if you never get to this kind of understanding of the situation, you'll continue to do the same stuff you've always done, which is very bad. If you just continue to go out every Friday and it's fine if you don't want to become successful, but I'm saying if you want to become successful and you never question, why am I going out? Why am I doing this? What is the purpose of this, right? You need to kind of snap out of it and really think and ask yourself, what is the purpose of my daily routine? How can I change this to become successful? And what kind of social norms exist that really do not benefit me in any way, right? That is the most important thing I think you need to understand is because a lot of times we want to conform, we want to be with other people, but it's to be successful, the very definition is you can't be like other people because most people are not successful. And therefore you're going to have to take a lot of actions that are against what the majority of people would do. And so if you're sitting over here thinking like everybody else, that it's not going to work. You have to really think on your own and develop this kind of own independent filter with which you view the world. So you may be like, okay, Ryan, that sounds great. How do I do that? Well, we're first going to start by looking at a problem. Then you look at your assumptions and you try to find the truths. So one problem maybe is like, I can't eat healthy food, or I'm like overweight or something like that. I don't have a good diet. And so some assumptions are like, oh, fast food is just like so much more convenient, or it's cheaper than, buying healthy food, all this stuff, right? Those could be a lot of assumptions, or, I'm just like, I work out too much, I go to like my job, it's like very taxing, I don't have time to cook, I don't have time to do this, right? And so those are all the assumptions, but then we need to get to the more important part, which is the truths. What are some truths in this situation, this hypothetical situation? Well, if you actually consider going and buying groceries and cooking for yourself, the cost per meal is typically much lower than it is for, a McDonald's burger. The reality is if you go buy rice, you go buy chicken, you go buy something else, maybe some vegetables, right? You put them together, you cook for yourself, it's probably going to come out to probably like, $2, $3 a meal versus your McDonald's is like $6, $7, right? And so because of that, like that is a truth. That's a reality. So that's, instead of you just saying assumption like, oh, I think it's cheaper. Well, look at it. Is it really cheaper? No. And yes, of course, cooking, has time costs and stuff, but it's like, okay, what if the weekend before you cook all your meals for the week? Then there's no time cost. Now, all of a sudden, you've reached a fundamental truth where you start to realize, hey, fast food really isn't that much cheaper. It's still unhealthy. And there is a better alternative that I can use to still achieve my same goal of solving this problem of me not eating healthy. And this is a big example, but the point I'm trying to make here is that you need to boil down all of the problems in your life that you're currently struggling with down to the fundamental truth level, past the assumptions, because most people never get past the assumptions. They stick to these assumptions and they just take them. They just believe because I think it must be true. That's not true. We think about a lot of different things and they're not necessarily true, right? So you need to get past assumptions and go to the fundamental truths, because these fundamental truths are what's going to take you past certain barriers. So like one example is, like if you work, let's say you're just working on yourself, trying to improve, and let's say it's a Saturday, it's a weekend, and you work 5 hours and you feel a little tired. You're like, okay, there's two ways, different things about it. The assumption would be like, okay, that's it. That's my maximum for the day. That's all I can do. Because I'm tired, that means that like I can only work for a maximum of 5 hours. The fundamental truth is like, maybe I just need a break. Maybe I just need a break and get some refreshing air, maybe get like a meal and then come back and I can do some more. Like that's the difference between assumption and fundamental truth. And the reality is that if you stick with the assumption, you're not going to do the work. Like you stick with that assumption, you're like, I'm done clocking out, I need a break. Versus like the fundamental truth is like, no, like, maybe you don't need that break, or maybe you do need that break, but maybe you can still keep pushing back past your own like mental barriers later and continue to do more work. So you need to always constantly seek this fundamental truth, because a lot of times the assumptions that the world gives you, that society gives you, that you give yourself, just are completely not true. And they're not based off anything. There's like no evidence to back it up at all. And so really you need to like go deeper. And that's the idea of this kind of way to think independently, is you have to start to analyze things in like your own way. Don't just look at what everybody else is doing. Really start to question and understand what you need to do. So like for me personally, I need to do a lot of work to become successful. Okay, well, I'm gonna have to make some sacrifices for that, right? What's the assumptions? Well, okay, like maybe I'll work an extra hour. Well, okay, but I know fundamental truth, that's not enough. I need to work more. So now it's like, okay, on Friday nights, we're gonna work, right? Okay, on Saturdays, we're gonna work. On Sundays, we're gonna work. Like, this is just where you get to that fundamental truth level versus assumption of everybody's like, no, you can't work that too much. Like the weekends are the weekends. You can only rest on weekends. Like, no, that's not true. And I'm not saying not to rest. I'm saying you need to work and then rest, repeat, repeat, repeat. You should be like on and off like that. It shouldn't just be like work, rest for like a year and then come back. Like, you don't need 2 full days to rest. You need probably like 2 good night's sleeps, maybe like 2 afternoons, but you can still get in 2 mornings of like 8 hours each of super productive work on the weekends. And it doesn't, just because society tells you that weekends are for just wasting time and just waiting, and partying or just doing whatever that's not really productive or not really helping you grow as a person, just because society has that assumption doesn't mean that you should take that as a fundamental truth. You need to do your own investigating, your own digging to see what is actually going on behind the scenes. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll see you in the next part of the series.